Hey, thanks for checking out this podcast. Our hope is that it's an encouragement to you, that it builds your faith, that it helps you be a better leader and a better influencer in and through your life. If this is helpful to you, we'd love you to subscribe and also share it with somebody else to encourage them too. Thanks.
All right, welcome to the VC podcast. We're so excited to be together today. It feels like a while since we've done this, even though it's been consistent like every week, but I feel like every week, like 6 weeks go by in COVID, so.
Yeah, it's true. It's good to be back at the table with you and learning and growing together again.
Absolutely. Yeah, so first of all, for the sake of the topic, I think it fits. Talk to me about your day today. Talk to me about the moment you woke up and what you've done all day until this moment.
Wow, we're just going to start like that.
Just run me through it. Yeah,
tell you my
and I'll tell the audience
routine.
why at the end.
Okay, so today I woke up and walked downstairs, poured a cup of coffee that was already pre-made on a timer.
Dark roast, medium roast?
Komodo Dragon blend of.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty fancy. I have special coffee at home right now because I had a recent birthday.
Nice.
And so we got.
Happy birthday, by the way. I just passed. Happy birthday.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. So actually, I walk past one counter, I grab a mug. Then I walk to another counter, I grab a glass. I go fill the glass with water. Then I drink as much of the water as I can right then and there to rehydrate.
Wow.
Then I fill my cup of coffee. I go sit down. I finish my glass of water and sit down on my special chair and take my coffee, hold it in my hand, open my Bible, Book of Proverbs today.
Ooh.
Did some reading.
Nice.
And I close my Bible, and actually, and then I double check that my cell phone is left on the counter where I should have left it.
So you don't bring your cell phone to the table.
It is not allowed to come anymore. It used to come, but lately it is rejected from that meeting. And then, so when I check for my cell phone, at the same time I look in front of me, and actually I can see a picture of a mountain.
Wow.
And below that picture is a guy on his knees praying. And there's a little Bible verse under it. I can't see the Bible verse from where I sit, but I see the guy in the mountain, and I think, God, I'm going to seek your face.
Wow.
And then I spend some time in prayer. I have 3 kinds of prayer I do: surrender, worship, and listening.
Wow.
And for the listening prayer, I take out a journal because I think if I don't have a pen and paper in hand, then I'm probably not listening with the right intent.
Yeah.
So it doesn't take a super long time or anything.
Yeah, how long, rough estimate? So you wake up, you go downstairs, coffee, Bible, praying, all that morning routine stuff for you.
So it's probably been 30 minutes so far.
Wow, okay.
And then now I'm going to grab a book. So I finished that prayer piece. I grab a book. Today was a book I'm really just loving called The Lazarus Life. I told you about it the other day, and it's just powerful. Stephen Smith, I believe, is the guy's name who writes it. But
awesome.
So I read a chapter of that. That takes another 15 minutes probably. And then, but there I'm sort of watching the time now because I know come 8 o'clock or a certain time, depends on the day actually, they have different routines. But today was 8 o'clock, jump up, head upstairs, get ready for my day, do morning routines.
Right.
Then have some breakfast, then touch base with my family, do a few little family pieces about our day, and then I head out the door.
You launch.
Here I am.
Yeah, you show up here on a normal day. You know, we pray together as a staff.
5 to 9.
Yeah.
Right here. We pray. We read a verse. Today our routine, our family routine was interrupted because we were bringing a vehicle in to get fixed.
Right.
And that happens quite a bit too.
Totally.
Just like all these interruptions to our routine. So we do staff prayer, stand-up prayer meeting. It's just a gathering in the foyer.
Yeah, we just circle up right in the foyer here.
A few minutes, talk about maybe some of the highlights of what we're doing that day. And then I get at my morning routines, which is to go to inbox 0. That's my first goal. So emails to inbox 0. And then
you run through your work day.
Go to meetings.
That's sweet. Today we're talking all about home and routine. The topic of Victory at Home is what we're going through as a church, and so I'm pretty excited.
I brought
Victory
this.
At Home.
I just wanted to.
For those of you YouTube listeners, we love you YouTube listeners. There's some visual there, so our editing people may even put a picture up.
They might.
In between us, who knows?
Yep.
You might spoil us this week, humor us. But yeah, we're in this series on Victory at Home, and I thought what a fitting topic on this podcast to talk about how do we make our home a sanctuary.
Yeah.
What do we do with the home piece?
Yeah.
So this whole podcast is about walking through those steps to the Christian faith,
Yeah.
to kind of help people move along in their faith. And we started with those big, really important pieces. We talked about baptism, getting saved, the gospel. Like we talked about all those bits, prayer. And I feel like this is such a fitting step now for someone who's walking through the Christian life. Early on, you're going to have to ask yourself, what do I want my home to be?
Yeah.
And so we're going to talk all about that today. We're trying to talk about 3 elements to your home life that are going to help you.
Awesome. And I love that idea. Home is a sanctuary. I love that term, that phrase. And I mean, your heart should be a sanctuary, a place for the presence of God to be.
Yeah.
A place of rest, a place of refreshing and strengthening, and a place of purpose, all these things.
Yeah.
So sanctuary just has a great terminology to it.
Yeah.
And it's great to think of our homes that way and to be intentional about it. And I guess partly, too, what gets me fired up about talking about this with you is I think our homes can be a place of so much joy and peace and fullness, but also a place of so much pain and torment.
Oh, man.
I mean, for all of us, probably our best and worst memories have to do with home.
Totally.
And so, you can sort of, I guess, regret or, spend half your life in a counselor's office dealing with that, which is probably good to do. But maybe more importantly is how about from now forward? How do we shape our homes so that we can increasingly have them be heaven on earth instead of hell on earth?
Yeah, so for me, I grew up with a pretty mixed home life. The majority of my home life was spent just kind of off on my own. And I didn't have like a clear father figure to tell me how the home needed to be ordered. I didn't have a clear mother figure to tell me how the home needed to be ordered. And so I was just kind of left to my own devices. Went to college, did the dorm deal, extended, adolescence a bit there, got married, and clean slate. And how do we figure this out? And over the last year or so, maybe more, I've been trying to be a sponge to your household. Like, how do I learn? How do I pick up habits? Because I've got 2 little kids. And so I want to make our home a life-giving space for them, as well as a life-giving space for my wife and I. And so...
and I love how you use those terms. I'm going to be a sponge. I'm going to observe, because so much of learning home life is by experience, by observation. And most of us have an upbringing to base that off of, but it's going to be imperfect. And there's so much more out there. And I think of when our kids have friends over, and then their friends' observations about our house, and then when our kids go to other people's homes and their observations, and they're always kind of shocked and stunned, like, not everybody's home is exactly the same, right?
A big thing for me growing up that I really had to learn is that it can be done differently.
Right, exactly.
It can be done differently, and it doesn't need to be a certain
there's
thing.
not a perfect answer.
There's a way to order my home that I'm built for, that my family's built for, that God has ordained me to do. To live out.
And maybe if you have some teaching and some examples, those you can take bits and pieces from those and bring them together and build something special for your family and for your heart.
The only way you can know better is to be shown better.
Right on.
And so that's kind of been something I've been dwelling on, is that phrase of I need to be shown better to know better, so I better go look, I better go find.
And I love asking other people, how do you do this? How do you do that? What does this look like for you? Like, kind of like you started the podcast today. It's like, tell me your routine today. And then, you just like little things from that, and sometimes you ask a question here, they're like, so what did you just say about that? Can I ask a little more? And
I was so embarrassed to ask those questions in my early 20s. Because I thought, I'm supposed to have this figured out. I'm supposed to be...
I should know all this.
I should know this. And it's only, a few years later that I'm like, I need to figure this out. And so... to be humble enough to be honest about how much I don't know.
Totally. And when it comes to home, that's 10x the what we don't know, because we only have our limited experience.
Totally.
So,
or worse, we have TV's examples, right?
Yeah, totally. So take a 13-year-old who's trying to figure out how to shave. Okay, 13-year-old
Yep.
boy is like, I don't know, what do you? You got nothing. Like, what do you
Yep.
go off of? Because nobody, you don't see that in the public square. You don't see it anywhere else in life. So you're just figuring it out on your own and like bouncing around here. And unless somebody shows you,
No one showed me. I ended up with a cut right here.
Totally.
For like
totally.
3 weeks.
Yeah.
So I just was like, how do I? Ow! And then I. Dull
and then
blade,
even,
like, it was
even
bad.
years later, like
Yeah.
you know, you're visiting with somebody and you're like, wait a second, what'd you just say about how, you know, you're this and that, the way you shave or something? And they're like, well, I do it like this because of this, and you're like,
Yep.
nobody ever told me that.
Yeah.
I didn't know, because again, these aren't things that we see in each other's lives. So asking questions, learning from each other, bringing this out, and observing each other, all these things, having examples is huge and helpful. And I love this series. I love what we're doing as a church right now.
Me too.
Fun.
It's such a resource blessing to my home, and so I'm excited to ask you about 3 different topics. Okay,
let's get into it.
The first one is talk to me about the environment of your home.
Right.
The physical setting. Like, what do you do about the space in your home to make it good?
Yep. So in my case, we have multiple people living in our house.
Yep.
And that has changed over time depending on seasons of our lives and who's living there and so on. But we have to figure out what works for everybody.
Yeah.
Because different people are fed by, helped by different environments.
Right.
And so we have to help each other and work with each other within that. So I guess I would say that. I would say that an environment that is too full of noise doesn't work at all for me.
Yep.
So if the television is on, I find that quite difficult.
Yeah.
Just certain things that for me, if there's too much noise going on, if there's too many voices running at a time, I need one of them to stop so that we got one channel of noise happening.
Totally.
And then, funny enough, I'm the worst at this in my house, so everybody else bugs me about it. But I don't like clutter.
Yep.
So dirty I can handle, funny enough. Like if the floor needs vacuuming, I'm okay.
Right.
But if there's stuff, like
just around
random stuff sitting in places that doesn't belong, I'm like, let's put that. So actually, even for me, the night before, like I was telling you my routine, I sit where I sit, what I can see, the night before, I actually move all the clutter so that when I get up in the morning and I sit down with my coffee, I'm not looking at all of that. And that's just my own weird, quirky personality. But I think my advice would be, get to know yourself.
Yeah.
What works for you? And what makes your home a place that's going to work for you? And give lots of grace to the other people you live with. Because I think sometimes you could be sort of upset with it. Well, I would be at peace if it wasn't for so-and-so who leaves clutter all over the place, or whatever your issue
all these dishes.
is. Yeah, who always has the TV on, or who always, it's sort of, then you become a victim, and the only way to change your reality is to fix someone else, which is never going to happen.
No.
So you're just going to live perpetually frustrated. So anyway, lots of grace for each other in our homes would be part of the environment piece.
Yeah, one concept about environment that Jordan Peterson talked about, which he talks about making your home a place you like to be.
Yeah, good.
So he literally talks about starting with your bed.
Yep.
Make your bed when you wake up.
Sure.
And then order your room, like clean your room.
Yep.
You said you want to be successful. I think his big thing is you want to be successful in life, clean your room.
Sure.
Make your room a place you want to be in.
You want to be there. That's a great way to say it. And you can tell. You walk into a space, you either want to be in it or you're sort of like,
Right.
And so, and whatever that, again, like, I don't think we have to get weird about it or legalistic about it.
Yep.
It's just looking at the spaces that I live and asking, how can I make this space more a space that I would like to be in?
Right.
And,
And I think it's important to know where your line is there, because some person may want to wipe down all the surfaces. They're like, man, I see every speck. I gotta. And a lot of people want things to be very straight.
Yeah.
So your own what's the word?
Customization.
Yeah,
or something.
Your own like line of quality.
Yep.
Your own stuff. Like, pick where it is, your own standard.
Yep.
And then try to live to it. And the big litmus is, do I like the space that I'm in?
Yeah, good. And then, but I think it's easy to refer to some of the externals.
Right.
But environment is so much more than external.
Totally.
So what's going on in me and my heart, my routines, You know, what are the feelings that I bring? Even being mindful, being conscious of those and aware. Last night I came home and I had a headache all day.
Right.
And then a couple of negative things happened in my evening. Like our oven didn't work right, and we got a piece of mail that wasn't encouraging me. And I just thought, wow, I could tank here pretty fast with my attitude, and then my evening's going to be not much fun.
Totally.
So I just thought I got to try to bring this back up. So it's just trying to be mindful, because environment is far more than just the space.
Yeah.
Right? It's also the attitude and the heart.
And one piece about environment that I didn't want to move on from is there are little things we can do with our home to remind us. So there's this passage in Deuteronomy, I believe you talked about, where it's like, put my word on your doorposts and keep it around you as a reminder.
Yeah.
And I love what you said about that painting on your wall.
Yeah.
Because what a good example of a reminder.
Yeah.
You know, you say that this thing about your home, a physical object, points you to Jesus.
Exactly.
It reminds you.
Yep.
And so, like, think through that. You know, for me, I have like a couple posters in my office that like get me excited about that kind of stuff, and like reminders for myself, and maybe it's memories, maybe it's pictures of family or whatever it is. I think that having things that point you to the right direction mentally is huge.
So good.
Yeah.
And you build those over time. Yeah. I mean, you're not going to figure them all out at once, but
totally.
And then let me say something radical here too.
All right.
Our family, actually, I have a picture of this too. I'll show you guys someday, or maybe I'll give it to our editors or something. But my family growing up never had a TV at all. Zero TV. And we're so radical about it, the Calgary Herald did an article on my family. I have a picture of that article, or of our family, the whatever, the guy doing the article to the picture. Yeah, we're sitting around our table reading our Bibles, you know, because what intrigued
awesome.
the guy who did the article. But no TV in our house was so crazy in that day, right? So even when my wife and I got married, we chose not to have a TV for a number of years.
Right.
And we had one time we were pastors, and we had a family over, and the family was so distraught that we didn't have a TV. The next day, these delivery guys delivered us a television.
Oh, wow.
That was our first television. It was a gift from this family that just couldn't believe we didn't have one. And they even paid for cable for the first year for us, you know. It's so funny. But we have always chosen to keep our TV in our basement.
Right.
So we've never had a TV in our living room. And that's just been our family's choice, sometimes to live without a television, and then never to have a television in our bedroom, and never to have one in our living room.
And I've been in your house. It's a very welcoming space. You can tell that it's a meaningful space.
Yep.
Like you have comfy chairs, which I've seen you read in, and I've seen you read books with my son. My son goes over to the Goddard's house.
August and I will write stuff together. You know, we'll get drawing or whatever, and it's sitting on that chair. And
and that environment's so big because it's conducive to those actions.
Yeah.
And I love that. So, you know, ordering your home in a way that points you in the right direction.
And I was hesitant to mention the TV because I think different families are going to do it differently.
Oh, yeah, I have a TV in my living room.
Right, and I don't want to push people to do it my way necessarily, but just to think through how are these different things affecting us, and to say, are there changes we could make that would be beneficial?
Yeah, that's huge. And so, that first bit is environment. Think through your home. How can I order my home to be a place of worship? One of my biggest struggles in high school is when I first got saved, is kind of all my worst moments were in my home.
Right.
So the hardest place for me to worship God was my home. So I just wanted to leave all day. Yeah. I would spend as much of my day out of my home as I could. Yep. And when I was home, it was the hardest place to read my Bible. So I would get out, I'd go for a walk and go sit under a tree and read my Bible. Because I just couldn't do it in my bedroom. Yeah. And that's something that I've had to like slowly redeem in my own home. Right. Even my own habit now is to do my prayer outside of home, do my Bible reading outside of home. Yep. And slowly it started with my bedroom, make my home a place of worship. So how can I make this a place where I can like really center in on God?
And I love the idea of redeeming it, because sometimes you look at a certain spot and think, ugh, that is not holy, not sanctified, not what it could be, not a sanctuary, not whatever. but then invite God to redeem it. How could God turn that to something good? Yeah.
Absolutely.
And maybe in the meantime, you got to find other ways and do other things. But yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so number 1 is environment. Number 2, routine.
Routine.
I think routine is a huge piece of home. Home is the place where majority of your most important routines will happen. So you actually walked me through your morning today and routines without going into detail, because I know you're a king of routines, or at least your son's the master of routines.
He is. Yeah.
What's important? What's important about routines?
Well, let me say this first of all. You're probably living by routine whether you realize it or not.
Ooh.
So
Say that one again.
Yeah, we're all living in routines. I mean, that's just like you can't consciously choose every single thing you do all day long. You wouldn't be able to function.
Yeah.
So the only way human beings really function well is by we can learn a few new things at a time, but we can't be doing something new every second of every day.
Oh man. Okay, so you said some 2 really important things. One is that you're already living in a routine.
Right.
So even if you're the most like eclectic person who just all day they just do what they like, me, that's my own natural habitat. As I go with the flow.
Yeah.
But what you would say is that my flow, me going with the flow, is a routine.
Oh yeah, there's ruts. There's ruts you're flowing. Like you think of how water flows. I mean, no question. If somebody examined your life, they would find the routines.
And you said, so I always thought of routine as a decision-making moment where I decide to do this thing in this box.
Right.
But you would say a routine is something that you already do.
Yep.
It's about flipping those.
Yeah.
So there are 2 kinds of routines. There are routines on purpose, and there are routines that you just sunk into.
Yeah, exactly. Routines are what we do without thinking about it. They're what we do just normally.
Wow.
And of course, that takes less emotional, mental decision, willpower, energy. So, you brush your teeth every day. You shower, you do these, you put on your socks, whatever. Those are all routines, and you don't have to put new conscious effort into them.
Right.
So we all have them, and we all live by them. I mean, you have to function. So the beauty of the home, though, or victory at home, is that you can examine your routines. You can become aware of them because you're probably not aware of them.
Right.
And
Okay, so, man, there's so much there. So here's a dirty little secret about my life.
Okay.
Is brushing my teeth was not a routine for me.
Right.
It's barely now becoming a routine. Did I do it? Yes.
Yeah.
Alarms, conscious effort.
Right.
Doing it on the bus on the way to school. Like I was not raised in a way where someone told me every morning to brush my teeth.
Yep.
Or every night.
Yep.
And so it was like off and on. I have great dental health, by the way. Everyone listening and watching, I've been to a dentist. He says I'm doing great. I've got great dental health, but it was not a habit, and so it was a weird struggle for me in my 20s. Like the last 5 years of my adult life, basically figuring out how to make brushing my teeth a habit.
Totally.
And it's just barely becoming a habit and not a choice every day.
Right.
So I have to consciously do that.
Yeah.
And so if even brushing my teeth is something I have to pick up and learn, how do you make something from a conscious decision every day? How do you turn that into a habit? Like, what's the mental transition?
Right.
Is there a science behind it? Like, how do I make something a routine?
So I mean, you're going to want to become aware of your current routines. Then you're going to want to ask what new routines you want, and then you ask this question, which you're asking: how do I build that new routine?
Yeah.
And typically, you need a vision, like a routine you want. Then B, you need a trigger, something that's going to remind you to do that.
Right.
Right. So whether it's an alarm clock or something that says, oh yeah, it's this time, this is what I do here. Because to start a routine, you need something to remind you to do it. Once you've done it for 40 or 60 days, or 40 or 60 times, if it's multiple times a day or whatever, you won't need the trigger anymore. But to start with, you need a trigger. And then you probably need a reward to help motivate that, get that going. Because again, it takes energy and effort. So
yeah. So I've got a couple personal questions about routine.
Yeah.
When did you start feeling like it? Or did you ever start feeling like it?
Right. So, yeah, of course.
Like your whole morning routine, like you've kind of figured that out over time, right? Like,
yeah.
Do you feel like it when you wake up in the morning?
No, never, right? Never. No.
Wow.
I mean, for me, there are probably some people who are genuinely morning people, but those are few and far between. Most of us wake up in the morning and what is it?
John go back to sleep.
Yeah, John Piper's saying is that the devil is sitting on my face right, when I wake up in the morning.
I was going to quote, that's what I was going to say. And I can relate to that.
Yeah, or the way, like in my early Bible college days, we would talk about living in the flesh or living in the spirit.
Right.
And I would always say, man, I wake up in the flesh. I don't know how to wake up in the spirit. Like for me, when I wake up, it's a fight to move from the wake up moment to being in the spirit or being in the right frame of mind. But you make the choices just because they're what you do. You know, you're not re-choosing them every time.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you make the decisions ahead of time, right?
Yep,
That's
absolutely.
A big thing to talk
so
about.
I mean, let me give you a couple random routines in my life that would. So I always set out my clothes the night before.
Really?
Yeah, because I hate deciding in the morning when I'm groggy what to wear.
Yeah.
For me, I'm groggy. I'm not fully engaged in and I'm not wanting to. So the night before, I'm in the right mood to decide that. So that's just a random routine that's in my world. I always make coffee the night before too.
Okay.
So it's funny when people are over at my house and I'm making coffee. They're like, "You having coffee right now? It's 9:00." I'm like, "Yeah, no, I'm making coffee right now, but it's gonna actually the timer is set for the next day and it'll make it in the morning."
Oh man.
Yeah.
So, how many years have you been following Jesus?
30 years.
30
Just
years.
about exactly.
At what year mark did this become a 80-90% habit for you?
You know what? The morning routine of Bible reading and prayer.
Yeah. We'll start with that.
So 15 to 25, probably 12 years in. Yeah, by the time it became a real solid habit. Yeah.
So that's just an encouragement to everyone who's watching at home.
Yeah.
You've arrived there after a long time of making those divots, and you're a motivated person when it comes to that. Like that was something that you worked on, right?
Yeah.
I know you've shared before in your journey with that whole morning routine thing. It's actually something that it wasn't natural to you, right, at first?
Routines are not always easy to build, and you just keep at them. One of the key points when you know your routine is probably going to stick is when you come to that moment where you decide, I'm going to work on this the rest of my life. Whether I succeed or not.
Right.
This is not because perseverance is not perseverance if you give up.
Ooh.
So a lot of people are like, well, I tried that. It's like, well, what does tried that mean?
For how long?
Yeah. So that moment you decide, I'll work at this the rest of my life.
Right.
There's a breakthrough right there, right? That eventually the rut's going to form. So, and the reason I'm thinking rut is I have this little quote in my mind about a backcountry road that the ruts are really deep, and a little sign that says, "Choose your ruts carefully. You'll be in them for a long time."
Wow.
So I always love that little
That's
saying.
a good sign.
Choose your ruts carefully, right? Because it's pretty hard to steer out of a rut once you're deeply in it.
Oh man. Wow.
Yeah.
So a big thing for routine that I really want to clarify here is that you have to make room for your routine.
Right.
So when do you go to bed at night?
Yeah, so I try to go to bed earlier than later.
Yeah.
To my general rule, and sometime between 9 and 10:30 would be my bedtime. Yeah.
Now I'm going to ask a hard question.
Yeah.
Why?
Well.
Yeah, walk me through.
Because I want to have a fantastic day the next day.
Yeah.
So I'm investing in the next day, and part of that is my morning routine, but part of it is my whole day.
What about your TV shows? Don't you want to watch TV?
Oh, you know what? The bedtime is torture for me. I don't like going to bed.
Really?
Yep. I want to live life. Like, this is just how I'm wired.
Yeah, you want to fill it. You've got time, you want to fill it.
I have major FOMO, right? Fear of missing out.
Yeah, okay.
My whole world is like, I can't stand the thought of missing anything.
I can relate to that.
Yeah, so going to bed is torture, for me. And some people love it, right? They're
Right.
like, oh, I just love sleep. Not me. And then the other challenge for me with going to bed is my willpower is weakest in the evening. So, usually your willpower weakens through the day, and that's certainly true for me. So making tough decisions at night is harder for me. And that's why having a bedtime is helpful to me. Sometime between that.
So this year, I made a new resolution for myself, and some weekends I don't do this, but pretty much every day that I have something in the morning, the next morning, I'm in bed, my kids are asleep, and I'm in bed, and within a couple hours I plan on being asleep, but I'm in bed, everything's off around 8 p.m.
Wow.
So 8 p.m. every night where I'm not running youth group or running young adults, Winter and I are going to sleep. And we've got different phases of that 2 hour bit. Like this amount of time we're going to spend like talking and like kind of winding down, and then this hour we're going to spend listening to something, and then this hour is just dead. This is like 10 p.m. we're out, we're asleep. And I never ever made that decision in my life before. And this has been the most stable year of my life.
That's awesome.
To kind of get a bit deeper into it, a year ago to the month, I had one of the hardest, I guess, burnout bits of my career, or whatever you want to call it. It was when we were working at home.
Right.
And I was struggling, and my routines got me this far, but they couldn't get me through that.
Right.
So I was up till midnight, 1 a.m., because I'm like, I have to be up at 9, or I work at 9, so I guess I'm going to try to, I'll go to sleep before 1 a.m., then that's like kind of 8 hours of sleep. And it was so unhealthy for the longest time. And it was at that moment that it really caught up to me. When you take away all these things that I had made, these unhealthy habits that I didn't realize were all that unhealthy. And then when pressurized, when we're working from home, when things are difficult, when, work life, church life, everything was ambiguous.
Yeah, that was such a crazy season for so many.
It was a crazy season. And I just was like, I don't know what to do. And so I needed something to change. And it took me 6 months to do two things: recover and reorient.
Right.
So I had to recover from a burnout season and reorient leading up to December, to January, when I started this change, this shift, to what do I want the rest of my life to look like? And I had kids that were getting older, and I'm like, how do I, by older I mean 2 years old, what do I want the rest of my life to look like? And so I made some really conscious decisions. I made like 3 or 4 massive changes. One of them stuck, and that was my bedtime. I had all these New Year's resolutions, but like some of them half stuck, but the really one that stuck was that bedtime. Like I need to go to sleep at 8 p.m.
It's huge. And you know what? I think, okay, we've talked about environment, we've talked about routine, we need to move on, but just more, this routine thing is so big. Right? And what you're sharing is so key, because I think most of the time we don't have enough momentum to change routines until there's a price we're paying that's negative. Like until there's something, they always talk about hitting bottom before you change, or people change when they hurt enough they have to. That tends to be a rule, right, of change. So usually you have to come up with a situation where you're like, this needs to change. This is not working. And then, like you said, then you begin to reorient, and you got to recover, but then reorient, and you've got this, enough reason to then fight through the new routine and build a new rut.
And the dream of any routine is that it's life-giving.
Exactly. Absolutely. You're never doing this, and I guess, anyway, we can say so much about that, but you're not doing it to make your life miserable. You're doing it to live a fuller, richer, more abundant, more helpful, more loving life.
So you've been following Jesus for 30
years.
30 years. What role does creativity, that's the next word, so it's environment, routine, creativity.
So here's the deal.
Talk to me about creativity over the course of 30 years.
Because I think this is really important, all the other things we've been talking about, and I hinted at it earlier when I talked about the other people in your home. But when it comes to your environment and your atmosphere and life at home, you've got to be flexible with the stuff that's going on. Because you're going to set routines, you're going to have ruts, but stuff's going to mess those up. There's going to be other situations, and you need to decide how rigid each of your routines are. So an example of this for me would be, I've been doing daily Bible reading and prayer for years and years and years.
Right.
Well, some seasons my kids were little. They'd be crawling all over me while I'm doing it. And I had to be okay with that. I mean, if I'd get grumpy and upset and tell my kids they couldn't crawl on me while I'm trying to do my Bible reading, it would certainly defeat the whole peace and presence of God, right? So, you have to, there's a certain level of flexibility that has to go into how you live with these things. And you have to decide with each routine how flexible, how rigid you're going to be. yeah. I have one friend, when he knows his bedtime is 9 o'clock. And he goes to small group and meetings and various things. He's on boards and this and that. At 8:45, anywhere, anytime he
leaves.
Yep, he smiles at the people, says, thanks everybody,
Gotta go.
see ya, and walks out.
Wow.
And as you get to know him, he'll just tell you that. Like, he'll be like, hey, just so everybody who knows me knows, you know, at 8:45, my carriage turns into a pumpkin, right? And he says, so I'm always gone at that time. So for him, he's got a hard, rigid piece there. And for other people, they'd be like, yeah, I try to, but I'm open and so on. But
Right. I'd be like 80%.
Yep.
Like, I'm like 80% of the time.
Right.
8 p.m. is my thing.
Yeah.
You know, unless something that is more important than that comes up. So like youth, young adults, you know, I gotta you know, pivot. But like 80%.
You have to wrestle with how flexible, how rigid, depending on your season of life, depending on your age of your kids, depending on what else is going on in your world. Sometimes there's other added stresses that come that make you have to adjust, all of that. So I just say that. And then, of course, with that flexibility, ultimately comes creativity. Because then you have to add to that, like, okay, because I'm being flexible now, how am I going to add this or that? And as you do that, what you find is actually changing up your routines on occasion helps you keep fresh. It helps you just experiment with new things and different things. Because sometimes routines can become stale. And environments can become stale. So it is good to change things up. Move the furniture around. If we're talking home, you know.
Once every few months.
Sure.
My bed is on a different wall in our bedroom.
Sure.
Like, we're just like, well, we move it here, you know, change it up, and it just feels like a new room. Creativity is huge. One thing I want to talk about again with this creativity bit is that routine in the morning. You know, where your Bible reading's there, whatever you're doing in that morning, creativity can look like, for a season, doing an audio Bible, just for the bulk of it. You know, one thing that I'd love to plug here is that there's a thing called Daily Audio Bible.
Okay.
And this guy runs a podcast, but it's more of an audio Bible than a podcast.
Right.
He says, good morning, how was your day? And then he reads 3 different chunks of scripture to you and then talks about them. And then that's it. So it's like 30 minutes. It's an app on your phone. It's called Daily Audio Bible. It goes up every morning.
Fantastic.
And in my more tired seasons, especially in the winter time, I can get a bit fuzzy here and there. In the mornings, they're a bit hard. Daily Audio Bible got me through for those when
that's so cool.
Hands-on Bible reading wasn't.
And then, so here's the deal. We get to share with each other different resources for different seasons of our lives, try different things, and that can be so life-giving. And wonderful. It made me think of an app I used for a certain season on contemplative prayer. And that's what I would do in the mornings. You hit play, and then this app walks you through this prayer guide, you know. And for like a couple of months for me, that was just really helpful and enriching. And then after 2 or 3 months, I was like, okay.
Let's move to the next thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. That's so good. So be creative, be flexible, but always try. Always make sure the space in your life is non-negotiable. But how you do it is negotiable. Right. If that makes sense. So make the decision ahead of time. But be flexible with how you go about it.
Totally. And just awareness is so key. So we want our homes to be sanctuaries, like we said, right? So it's like, well, is my home that? And how do I make it more that? How do I invite more heaven on earth into my home? Right. What am I going to do with my environment? What am I going to do with my routines? What am I going to do with creativity so that I can bring heaven on earth increasingly into my home life? And so good. It's fun. And, you know, probably at the end of the day, learning to have a lot of grace, a lot of forgiveness, a lot of love for each other. If you got multiple people in the home, that's probably going to be the most important piece, right? Is learning to love each other well, in the midst of all those other pieces that we've talked about.
Awesome. So the three keys to having a good, healthy home is, you know, look out for your environment, look after your routine, and be sure to invest in creativity. Very fun. Thank you. Well, have a great week, everybody. We look forward to hearing from you and talking with you again.